Does everyone have at least more than one fear? Let's see how many people have more than one fear. More than two fears? James, is your hand not going up intentionally?
I just can't think of anything major that I'm afraid of.
Your wife? Ex-wife, I mean?
No.
I'm kidding. All right, hands down. So here's what I want to do. I want this to be a participatory. So if I can have more magic markers up here, please. I'm going to have all of you come up here. I want you to, everyone to write down at least 2 fears that they have up on the board, legibly, so I can read it. So come on up. Grab a magic marker. 2 fears.
I fear that we cannot feed him.
You can use that.
Oh, that's a cute doggy. Yeah,
When you're fearless.
he's
Hey, you sit down and behave. Hey. No, he's not supposed to raise names at people, but.
well, I'm pretty sure he's got some fears. How about
I think that because you can only get 8 people.
There you go.
Only 2?
2. Well, you can put more if you want. But make them nice and legible. Look at the variety of fears that we have. Ooh, I like that. 8. There's 8 over there. That's good. Let's see. I'm looking to see if, so there's a couple of health that I see up there. Some heights. Intimacy. There's a couple of death of a child, death of themselves, I'm assuming. Health, loss of a family member. All right. Self-deception, being alone. Quitting a bear job. That's pretty good. I like that one. All right. So we have a number of fears up here. Missing the mark. Who wrote missing the mark? Where's that? I got mine. Sorry. My husband's name is Mark. Okay. So here we have a number of fears. Dying, sickness, loneliness, no love, being crippled, being poor, going back to Romania, and mom dying. Oh, now I know who wrote that one. Running out of assets, I wrote this one already, being alone, quitting a job. All right. So, as we often talk about in Omega 1, people may not have the same fears, but when you boil it down to the subject, it's fear. And fear affects us in many different ways. So now that you've had a chance to talk about fear and put it up on the board, and some of you might be afraid because it's up on the board for everyone to see. No, that's okay. I want you to have a conversation now with your buddy about how does fear affect you? The fears that you put up there, what happens to you when you experience these fears? Go ahead. May I have your attention, please? I'm very curious to see what Alan and Tamara are talking about because they're doing this. Embrace my fear. All right, let's hear from some of you. Give me a fear and what it does to you. When you experience this fear, what happens to you? Here.
He says the cat downstairs and it makes him walk through the water so that the cat can't spit at him. And
I'm sorry, that's Gibbs?
Yeah.
Okay, got it.
And wild turkeys, it makes him stay away from groups of big dark birds.
Okay.
Swans, he's fine. The big dark birds, he's afraid they're going to do what the 7 turkeys up at the cabin did.
So he likes the white birds.
Because he doesn't think they're turkeys.
Okay. Someone else, give me a fear and what it does to you. Yes, Kim.
I have a real bad fear of heights. I feel like I'm going to fall and die.
Mm-hmm.
And I get, my heart starts beating real rapidly if I'm, up on something high and I'm having to look down. I can't go to the edge and look down. My mind starts just going and going, and I get sweaty palms. When I was 20, I had to climb a ladder for something and I froze. I totally froze. I couldn't go up, I couldn't go down. Somebody had to take me off the ladder.
Wow. Okay, so paralyzed in there. So you had me thinking, I had a friend of mine, she was 6'2", terrified of heights. It used to make me laugh. I'm like, you're tall, how can you be afraid of heights? But she was terrified of heights. So yes, I took her to Sedona, and I love hiking in Sedona, so I took her up Bell Rock. Now, if you've ever been Bell Rock, it's very open. So we now decided or discovered that not only is she fear of heights, but it's heights where there's nothing to hang on to. Because she kept thinking she was going to fall off the mountain and roll over, even though we were on a nice flat surface. But you're right, her mind, and she froze at one time. She froze, and no matter what I couldn't get her to talk her down, but I had to close her eyes. And when I finally closed her eyes and she held my hand, she was okay. But she really paralyzed with fear. I can see that happening. Lonnie, was your hand up?
Yeah, it was. Success. And that's limiting. It's very, very limiting.
So when you think about it, does your mind just start reeling?
No. I'm not sure what it does, but it's just, it's an unbelievable thing that it's so limiting, keeps me in this little box. You can make so much money, you can do so many things, you can go so many places, but you can't prosper past that point.
Would you say so that means you're not pushing yourself?
I'm not striving.
And you settle?
Yes.
Okay, excellent, good. Someone, yes?
The fear of success, self-sabotage.
Self-sabotage.
Procrastination.
What are some of the things you do?
Oh gosh, miss appointments, forget appointments, even if I've written them down. Not make phone calls, make out a plan of, a step-by-step plan to reach a certain goal and get 3 into it and then just not finish them.
Okay,
Yeah,
excellent.
the not finishing thing.
Well, not excellent, but good that you're aware of that. Okay, good, thank you. Tony?
I have a fear of having bad news from my health or something like that. And it creates a lot of anxiety, almost to a panic attack. So then I have all the other things that roll off, like the aftermath of all that anxiety. And
Isn't that strange? You're anxious about having bad health, which is going to cause bad health. Because you're stressed about it. Okay, that's good, thank you. Tamara?
Mine kind of goes along with what the others have said. The energy just stops. It's locked. I pull in, and it's self-perpetuating. It's like that once the energy is locked, then I'm stuck, and it's very difficult to do the things that will help me come out of it.
Would you say, excuse me, would you say, thank you. Would you say that you stop thinking clearly too?
I don't even know. Probably. It's more of a feeling sensation. The energy's just blocked and stopped, and it's very
So
difficult.
like heaviness and weighted down. I'm just grabbing here.
I am not sure that that's accurate.
Okay.
It's
So
just a
just say
blockage.
block. Yeah. I'm just trying to define block. That's all. All right, no worries. Yeah, Sharon.
I wrote death of a child. If I can't find them or get a hold of them on their cell phones, I'll start driving around trying to find them. Because they're probably over with their friends or something, but sometimes they don't pick up, and I'm worried about them. I can't focus on anything else until I know that they're safe. And
So
they're
panic sets in.
Yeah.
Right, and then the illusion starts creating, oh my gosh, what if something bad happened, and da 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 da. It was funny, I was talking to my dad today, and he made me promise him that I would not die before him, that I have to bury him first, because he doesn't want to have to deal with the death of a child, which I know a lot of parents feel that way. They would rather go before the child goes. Okay, excellent. Someone else? On fears and what it does to you. Yes, Lewis.
I think this may be a fear of failure or something, because a lot of times when I get into a conversation and I'll kind of be be talking with somebody and then says, oh, well, I did this and I could do that, and and it's kind of not exaggerating, but telling what I've done in the past, and then I kind of get cold chills up and down my neck. Why are you, telling these people all the things that you've done and what you could do and stuff like that. So it must be a fear of failure or something.
Okay.
But, just too much ego in that regard.
Right. All right, then,
Something.
thank you. And thanks for everyone else. A quick show of hands. How many people have ever been in a life and death situation? So that's 2, 3. Oh, did you change your mind? That's almost everybody in the room. Excellent. So in the life and death situation, did you experience fear? How many people, when you were in that life and death situation, how many actually experienced fear? Only, that's less than half. Now, here's a good point. Most of the time when we find ourselves in a life and death situation, if we're in the present moment, we don't experience fear. We experience the fear when we remember the event. When we recall, holy mackerel, what did I just do? That's when the fear comes. But 9 times out of 10, if we're present, we don't experience the fear. There are some times that the fear does sneak in. But most of the time when it's in a life and a death situation, it happens so quickly, we're not thinking. And remember, fear is connected to our thoughts, so there's no chance for fear to seep in. The fear comes in after the event happens, and then we sit down and go, oh my gosh, what just occurred? So there are times when we have fear, and it's helpful. There are times we don't experience fear, and then there's times we experience fear, and it's not helpful. It clouds our thinking, it clouds our vision, we freeze, we paralyze, we go blank, we don't know what to do. So fear affects us in many different ways. Now, I started out, when I mentioned on the newsletter, that the average person would deny any fear. And if you poke and prod at them, they'll give you little things. And I don't mean to diminish this in any way, shape, or form. But they'll say things like spiders or car accidents. But not many of them will actually mention the 6 most basic fears that everyone has. According to this paper, which this is actually came out of George's files, I kind of used a little bit of his material, and I bounced off of Torcom's work as well. According to my research, these 6 basic fears are felt by every human being on the planet. At one time or another, each of us have experienced these 6 fears. Now, they may not have a hold on us like some of the fears that we experience, but we've all experienced them at one time or another in our life. Most of our fears we experience as children, because the world is great and big and huge, and we're just experiencing things. There are some fears that happen as we get older, because our mind is cognitive, we have recollection, we can recall the past, and we can project into the future. Fear, sometimes we're afraid of the future. The what is, what's going to happen. Remember when 2000, when we were going to switch over from 1999 to 2000, and there was worldwide panic that there wasn't going to be any food and water, and the planes are going to fall out of the sky because the computer systems are going to freeze. You remember all of that? That was very funny. Not funny, but there was a lot of money was made on that transition, I can tell you that. All the people that were selling the food for a year and the big water barrels and whatnot. And then in 2012, remember 12-12-12, the 2012, that, the Aztec calendar, the world's going to come to an end thing. So another fear-based myth, we could say. Now, does it mean that things haven't changed? I'm not sure. The 12-12-12, that was supposedly the harmonic convergence where the energies of the planet shifted. From my experience looking at the news, it certainly looks like the energy has shifted a little bit towards the negativity now. There's a lot more violence. I've been reading up on the issues in Russia now because, you know, they have the Olympics starting in 2 weeks, I believe. So first they have, for those of you who don't know this, Russia has an anti-gay law. You're not allowed to be any public display of any kind of gay or sexual preference. So it means no rainbow colors or flags or buttons or anything. No public display, especially around children. According to Putin, he wants to not influence children. He wants them to have their own free speech and mind by disallowing. But I've read other reports how people say there's widespread bullying, I guess, on a lot of gay people now in Russia, so there's a lot of people leaving. So people are afraid to go to the Olympics, like Olympians who are gay are afraid that something might happen to them. But now I just read today that one, a very top bomber, suicide bomber, has been spotted inside the curtain of steel that Russia says is going to protect for security. She supposedly made it inside. So they're expecting some kind of bomb to go off. So now this is all based on fear. We don't know if it's true or not, but it's fear. And then of course, you know, violence is increasing, the bullying is increasing. So I can see that there is a lot of negativity vibrating now, which is what was supposed to happen in 2012. Consciousness was going to increase to a peak, and then we'd have a choice to continue on the negative or go towards the positive. At least that's what some of the teachings talk about. So that's why I thought fear would be a good thing to discuss tonight, because it would be very easy to get wrapped up into that fear. You know, I think I just read that Iran is not going to join in on the peace talks with Syria about disarming the nuclear weapons now, so there's disharmony over there. There's an increase of violence in, I want to say it's Persia, but I'm not sure, where the increase of throwing acid in women's face is on the rise. You know, if you're angry and upset, just throw acid in their face. Gang rapes are just really toppling over now in India. It's just phenomenal how many. I read an article where a Polish woman was visiting with her 2-year-old daughter in the car in a taxi and was raped by the taxi man, with her 2-year-old daughter sitting right next to her. It's just rampant. It's like that town, but what's the capital? Is it Bangladesh or?
New Delhi.
New Delhi, thank you. It's in New Delhi, it's exactly in New Delhi. And the latest rape, New Delhi, in the tourist section in the middle of the day, 6 men rape a woman right on the street. Nobody stops them. So it just seems that crime seems to be on the rise. So fear naturally can be on the rise too, because there's so much occurring. So what I wanted to do was present us with the 6 basic fears tonight, and then in 2 weeks when we meet again, how we combat them. So sorry to leave you on the hook, but that's the plan. I don't want to leave you in fear for 2 weeks, obviously, but I wanted to be able to start. Remember, we talk about having a point of origin, to know where I am first, and then have a destination. Once I have a point of origin and discover what fears I have, then I have something to work on. So that's what I wanted to do tonight, was to discuss our fears and how they affect us. So the 6 basic fears that we have, as I said, most people have experienced these 6 basic fears in their life. Now, I do not know the source of these 6 basic fears, but I did go onto a couple of different sites, and they all were concurrent. So these are the concurrent 6 basic fears. So it seems that the psychological, but the psychology, you know, like mathematicians, the psychology group. What are they called?
Psychologists.
The psychologist, but I'm trying to say so I guess it's, never mind, I don't have Starbucks, my mind's not thinking clearly yet. It's
Psychoanalyst?
the psychoanalyst, but it's not the type of person, it's the field. The field is psychology, right? So it appears that psychology is saying that these are the 6 basic fears. New Age teachings talks about these are the 6 basic fears as well. Counselors, same thing. These are the 6 basic fears. So many different fields that I went to go search, they came up with the same congruent list. So that's the list I wanted to present to you tonight.
Psychosomatic?
Sure. Louis, I've moved on. I can't remember the name. Now, before I begin on the 6 ones, I want to just mention that fear affects us in many different levels. It affects us physically, emotionally, mentally, as well as spiritually. Physically, we know how it affects us physically. We got the knot in the stomach, or the shoulders are tight, or we have sleepless nights. We can't think straight. Thinking, is mentally. But physically, we can feel the disease. You know, a lot of people, when they feel a lot of sick, when they feel fear, they often are sick, or stress can affect us as well. So physical, we have a physical ailment. Of course, if we look at the electromagnetic spectrum, we know there's 7 levels of us. So we have the physical. Emotional, you know how fear affects us emotionally? We do the self-sabotage. We have the addictions. We shut down. We don't want to open up. We become ice kings and queens. We don't want to be vulnerable. And if you notice, there's a couple things up there about being vulnerable. That's emotional. Mentally, fear affects my mind like a fog. It sets in on a fog and I can't see straight. I can't think straight. I can't perceive things correctly. And then I'm left to the illusion of my mind, where I create a story and build that story until it's beyond its capacity, and then I'm terrified of that story. So fear mentally is the greatest damage that we experience is mentally. And then, of course, spiritually. We can have fear spiritually, but I'm not going to touch on that one just yet, on the spiritual planes. We can also determine that fear is the product of the major force behind greed, dishonesty, grouchiness and meanness, cruelty, and irritability in relationships. So fear is what destroys our relationships. It's based on fear. Torkham the Ageless Wisdom teacher who lived up in Sedona, passed away a few years ago. He said, where is it, right here, people hurt each other because of their fear of each other. And I think that's true. Not only do we hurt each other because of our fear of each other, but we have a tendency to hurt the people we love the most. That's because we're afraid that those are the people who are going to leave us, so that fear kicks in and we hurt them. And sometimes we're so afraid that they're going to leave us, we actually ensure that they do leave us. So we manifest that to happen. You see, our mind is such a powerful tool that if we feed that fire of fear, what's going to happen? It's going to create it. If everything is a thought of mine, if everything exists because of my thinking, and I'm thinking fear, I'm going to manifest that fear, one shape or another. It's going to happen. So people who live in fear are imprisoned. There's no freedom. There are people who are afraid of cancer. They die of cancer 1,000 times a day. They just feel it. Oh, I shouldn't eat that. It's going to give me cancer. Oh, I just passed somebody who's smoking. I'm going to get cancer. I mean, really, it could be that great. I grew up with a father who was a hypochondriac. He had so many illnesses, I can't even begin to tell you what they are, and everything was something. There was always a reason why he had some illness. There's always a reason. It made me laugh, and he's probably one of the reasons why I don't like to go to doctors, because he went to doctors so many times, so much when we were young. So, fear undermines our self-confidence, and it stifles our imagination. It destroys our initiative, our enthusiasm, and our ambition. So if I have fear, and even if I'm gung-ho on doing something, the fear kicks in, next time. I'm very good at saying next time. Oh yeah, well, I got close, next time I'll do it. This just doesn't seem right, or I need a little bit more time, I need a little bit more money. I gotta make sure everything's in row, so we're always falling on the next time when fear comes in. Here's something I'm going to mention that George says this. Not only do we experience these basic fears, we often feel that we are victims of the fear, as if it's happening to us, forgetting that we're creating it. So, millions of people are crippled throughout their lives because of some or all of these 6 basic fears. As a result, they live a very high level of tension. So we experience a lot of tension when we have fear. So the tension impairs us in many ways. And here's the catch to this. Because we experience tension at such high levels, and so often, we become accustomed to them, and we think that's the way we should live. We become so accustomed to it, we think it's normal. We think it's normal to have knots in our shoulders. We think it's normal to have a knot in our stomach. We think it's normal to feel anxious and tight. We think it's normal to walk around, and we become accustomed to it. Now, if I had my little light switcher here, the dimmer, I would use that as an illustration. We become so accustomed to it that we're not burning our brilliance anymore, and we think that's normal. Well, this is the way life is supposed to be. Knowing that I was going to write this workshop, I've been tracking myself for a couple of weeks on a daily basis to see how I feel on a daily basis. And the one thing that I am quite aware of is I have this feeling every day that I'm waiting for something else to happen. Like, I just can't wait for this to get done so something else can happen. It's like I want to get the workshop done, and then I can get to, but I don't have to get to what it is that I'm getting to, but I have this anxious feeling of getting it done so I can move on. That's the feeling. Whether it's moving on to die and go to the next level, or moving on to, I don't know, let's say win the lottery, or my next cup of Starbucks. It's just, there's always that sensation of I'm in the middle of this just to get it over with and get to the next thing. So since I've been experiencing that, I'd say I've been tracking this for about 2 weeks now, what I'm aware of is I'm not in the present moment, because I'm just trying to get it out of the way so I can move on to the next thing. So I'm doing it quickly, rather than fully enjoying what I'm doing. Let's go, come on, get to the next thing. So yesterday I decided to do an experiment. I didn't tell my husband I was going to do this, but I did it. I put on the playoffs. I haven't watched football in I don't even know how long, but I put on the playoffs yesterday. There were 4 teams playing. So the first one was the Denver Broncos versus the Patriots. So if you don't know anything about football, Tom Brady is on the Patriots. One of the Manning boys is on the Broncos. I used to love the Broncos when Troy Aikman was the quarterback. He's not the quarterback there. It wasn't Troy Aikman? Who was it?
John Elway.
John Elway, thank you. John Elway. Troy Aikman was on Dallas, thank you. So, whatever. One of the guys I used to watch, and I haven't watched Denver in a while. Patriots I don't really like because as a New York Giant, they're our rivals. So as a not a risk, but as a test, I rooted for the Patriots last night. I did, and I convinced everybody in my family I wanted the Patriots to win. I didn't. I didn't really necessarily want the Broncos to win, but I wanted whoever was paying the Patriots to win. I wanted the Patriots to lose. But I actually watched that game wanting the Patriots to win, and I really got into it. I really wanted the Patriots to win, all the while knowing I don't. So when they lost, I thought I would be happy because they lost. I wasn't. I was actually a little upset that they lost, but the idea was that I was working on releasing an attachment because that's what fear is based on, attachments. It's a simple football game, really. It's just a football game. It has nothing to do with me. The guys don't know me. I don't know them. We're not personally connected, but I have an attachment. And that's where it starts, when we have attachments. So then I watched the next game, which was the Seattle Seahawks versus San Francisco 49ers. Now in this one, I wanted the 49ers to win, clearly. Wanted the 49ers to win. My husband was being a bit of a turkey butt and kept rooting for the Seahawks. Now, one of the reasons why I didn't want the Seahawks to win is because I have been aware that the Seahawks are violent. They don't play good. They take cheap shots. They're aggressive. They have the most penalties of an NFL team ever. They have the record for the most penalties. They get in their faces. They start fights. They're just an aggressive team. So I didn't want them to win because they were aggressive, and they won. And it didn't help because he was like, yay, Seahawks, and I was getting angrier and angrier. Not angrily like I'm going to hit you, but if I had a helmet on, I'm sure I would have tackled him. And I thought, okay, I'm getting aggressive like the Seahawks, and I don't want to be aggressive like the Seahawks. So again, a clear picture of an attachment. But I thought, what's the difference between these two games? One of them I'm attached to a team, but I'm pretending that I want them to win. And the other one I'm attached to a team, and I really want them to win. And I experienced more stress on the team that I was attached to, and I wanted them to win. So I thought to myself, okay, if fear is based on attachments, and I'm really attached to something, and I know I'm attached to something, that's going to make the fear worse. I assume that's what's going to happen. So if I'm afraid that I'm going to lose my job, and I'm really attached to my job, then the fear is going to increase. But if I just have the idea I might lose my job, and I'm okay if I do, I can find another one, I don't experience much fear. Even though it's a fear, it seems to be multiplied when I'm attached to it. So there seems to be an idea of attachment to our fear. Now I'm not sure if fear creates the attachment or the attachment creates the fear. It's kind of like the chicken and the egg, which came first. But they seem to be intermingled. The things that I'm attached to, I have fear, and the things that I have fear, I have attachment to. So I'm going to break for a moment because I've been talking to you for a little bit. I want you to talk to your buddies now about the things that you're attached to and some of the fears that might be connected to them. May I have your attention, please? If you would have asked me a year ago if I was attached to anything, I would have said no. Of course not. I'm aware. I wouldn't be attached to anything. Then try to take my Starbucks from me. And I discover how attached I am. Try to take my chocolate from me. I'm attached. When the kids eat my Captain Crunch, I'm attached. So I start discovering that I'm attached to my possessions. That's one of the things I'm attached to. I'm really not attached to people. People come and go. Bye, Nicole. People come and go. See? I'm not attached to that. But my possessions, I am. And I was very shocked to see that it's my stuff. So having a 13-year-old stepdaughter, which is very funny because she's 5'8" now? She's 5'8" and she wears my clothes. I'm 5'2". What are you doing? But they fit. So she puts my clothes on and my pants are like capris for her. It just works for her. So my closet is her shopping gallery. And I'm attached. I'm like, what are you wearing? Where are you going? And the thing is, I know that when she gets to school, she has this thing with her friends, they'll switch clothes. You know, if one of them doesn't want to wear, they'll just change clothes. And she'll come home with different clothes.
Oh.
One time her friend came over and had my shirt on. I'm like, Marty, what are you doing? That's mine. And she's like, oh, I took it from Jenna. That's nice, thank you. So I'm attached. So that they've been giving me a wonderful opportunity to practice not being attached to my possessions. So that's one thing that I've discovered. I really thought I wasn't very attached to many things. But I'm bringing this up because I want to start introducing the fears. Now, this is not in the order of number 1, number 2, number 3. They're just the fears that they come up with. So the first fear that people talk about is poverty, which is an attachment to my things. I don't want to be without. So it's poverty. So I circled a couple. I have 3 up on the board that clearly mention poverty. And poverty doesn't have to be just money. It could be I have poverty without my possessions. My Starbucks, my chocolate, my Captain Crunch. Y'all know I live a very healthy diet now, don't you? And that's why I'm always sick. Anyway, so poverty, there's no compromise between riches and poverty. They lie in the opposite directions. If you want riches, you cannot allow a state of your mind that allows poverty. Fear of poverty is a state of the mind brought about by nerve exhaustion. I'm going to just introduce this to you for a moment. I'm not going to talk too much about it, but each one of these has to do with exhaustion of our nerves. Have you ever met a very fearful person? Their nerves are shot, aren't they? They're sometimes they're actually even trembling, but they don't have a good, strong, solid nerve. And we often talk about people who have courage. They have nerve. So we connect nerve with fear and courage. So I'm just going to introduce this for you for a moment, and we'll talk about this next time, that our nervous system can affect our fear. If we have a strong system, we have courage. If we have a weak system, we have fear. Now, not to say that just because you have strong nerves, you don't encounter fear, but it affects us less when we have strong nerves. So, a weak mind is brought about by nervous exhaustion. A vibrant, healthy body and mind easily acknowledges poverty and wealth to reach far beyond money, health, youthfulness, vitality, and energy. So if I'm about to face poverty and I introduce fear in that and I have weak nerves, I'm going to not be able to clearly think my way out. George used to tell a story. He had a friend of his who was running a printing company as well. And they always used to say that no one ever fails, you just quit. So this one printer people hadn't paid him yet, so he's running behind on his bills. The electric was shut off in his printing, and he had this big job to do. So instead of just closing his doors, he ran an extension cord from the neighbors. He brought it over into his shop, printed out his job, sure enough, got it delivered, got paid, got his electricity put back on. So that's an example how fear didn't take over. He was strong. I'm not going to let this win. What can I do? What are my options? When we have fear, we don't think that way, and we fall deeper into poverty. The other thing about poverty, I can think about this. Our welfare system was set up to assist people. It was never set up for people to live on. But once people get into the welfare system, sometimes it's easier to stay there, because at least you know you're going to get a check. At least you know you're taken care of. There's the risk if you get rid of it, you may not have anything, so it's better. It's kind of like that one, fear of quitting a bad job. It's fear of getting off of welfare because you may not have anything. So they stay on welfare. Again, I understand circumstances, I've got that, but a large majority of people, there are people on welfare who are generations of people on welfare. That's what their mom did, that's what their grandma did, you just live on welfare. And that's not what welfare was set up for. It was out of the generosity to help people get back on their feet, but not to make a living off of it. So that's all based on poverty. So poverty is one of the fears. The second fear, this is ill health. So ill health, I could go up here. How many people up here have ill health? Well, we could say right here. This is not waking from surgery, that's ill health. Bad health right here, we have got that. Heights, drowning, no, that's not it. Unknown incompetence, I would say ill health. I'm not going to take that. This physical problem, that's physical problems right there. Body failure right there. Death of a child, that's death. Health right here. I'm just looking at the different types of fears. Old, so becoming old, I'll say, no, that's wrong, sorry. That's another one. health of sickness, dying of AIDS, health, right there. So notice how we started increasing our fears now. So we have the ill health up here. Ill health, this is the seed of fear of, the seed of the fear of ill health lives in every human mind. In order for this fear not to build into a terrible living fear, and eventually in our reality, it's our duty to develop a strong nerve force. When nerve energy is low, every ache and pain is blow up into a deadly disease, like my dad, as I said, a hypochondriac. The imagination runs wild. A headache is often feared as a tumor. I've got a tumor. No, you don't have a tumor. Yes, I do. So, those of you who I've mentioned, I like the Big Bang Show. So Sheldon, one time Leonard was dating a doctor, and Sheldon kept bugging the doctor. Check, I'm sure I have a tumor, check. I'm sure I'm hearing something, check. Like he was constantly check. Because he thinks, to the extreme. Fear comes into the extreme. So ill health, another fear that we as human beings experience. The third fear, old age. Lots of us fear being old. So old age, I saw a couple of these. Being old and not being able to take care of myself. I don't really see too many things about being old, going back to Mommy and Mom.
I've got one up there.
Where are you, Liz?
Number 2 there.
Number 2, fear.
Yeah, fear of body failure, becoming an invalid.
That's good, thank you. So fear of being old. Now, fear of being old, I remember when I was little, and, kids often do things like, they look at your aunts and uncles and say, man, you're old. You turned 30? That's old. Remember that? And I remember one time I added up in the year 2000 how old I was going to be, and I was terrified. Oh my gosh, that's so old. I think I was 40-something in the year 2000. No, 30-something in the year 2000. So I remember thinking that was so old. I don't want to get that old.
Yeah, can I say something right now?
Yes.
Like last year I lost 2 brothers. One of them was 67, the other one was 68. And, they both got cancer and died. And then a couple of years before that, I had one that was 48, died of a cerebral hemorrhage. And the other one died of, got cancer in the leg, and he died. And he was only 51. And, and then I saw those guys deteriorate, and they were happy and healthy. And then all of a sudden, a year later, they're dead, I just buried a friend of mine here we went to school together, and he got prostate cancer, and he was on his way to being healed and happy and everything, and then all of a sudden he died. A month later he died, and I went to his funeral last month.
So you have a lot of ill health
Well,
around you.
Yeah. and this kind of gets into my mind, and I'm not really afraid that this is going to happen to me, but when you see this happening, it seems like, it could happen to you too. What's going to happen to all of us eventually, I guess, but sooner or later,
Okay, thank you.
It's really not a fear, but it's there. There's something in the back of your mind
That you're thinking of
it's
it.
a possibility.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. So back to fear of old age. This fear takes hold of the mind. The fearful picture of themselves as weak, old, feeble, ugly, trembling, half-blind, deaf, and senile. That's a big thing, senile. That was George's #1 fear. He didn't care what happened to his body, but he did not want to lose his mind. And when he started having dementia towards the end of the Parkinson's, he would come out of those spells knowing that he had been gone, and he would just cry, saying, please just kill me. Please, I don't want to live anymore. He doesn't want to live like that. And if we knew Dr. Kevorkian, I would have told him. Nobody laughs at that one either. But I really understand his fear of senility, because it's really a frightful thing. You don't know where you are, people are strangers to you, and he constantly was living in fear. I knew him for 20 years, and he would act like he didn't know who I was, and terrified of me, like I'm going to kill him or something. So it's just a horrible, horrible thing to experience. I shouldn't say horrible, that's a judgment. It's a very a difficult thing to experience. Unfortunately, too many of us will actually make this happen. The fear of old age can best be faced by correct thinking and correct living. It's been said that there's not a cell in our body that is over 11 months old. Think of that. There's not a cell in your body that's more than 11 months old, because we constantly regenerate. So There are, except for your teeth and your bones, they're just a little bit older, but not much more than that. Every day we tear down millions of cells and build up new ones. Therefore, what is it that's old inside of us? That's the question. What's old inside of us? Well, the poisons that are in us, the toxins that are within us, foreign blockages, and then he writes attitudes. Our attitudes are old as well. So those are things that we have an opportunity to change. We must practice the mental idea of biological years, not calendar years. We must develop our nerve and force it to its highest capacity. So I'm going to interject something in here now. Torkham talks about a little bit of confronting fears is by beauty and joy. And innocence. He uses the idea of innocence. Now some people have, you know what they say, good genes. You know, when someone, oh, you got really good genes, you look really young. So my brother and I, there's 4 kids. 2 of the kids look old, and 2 of us don't. So, which one am I? You better say young. So my sister's 3 years younger than me. Most people think she's my older sister.
And she does not like it when you make that
I know,
mistake.
she cannot stand that comment.
You
It
could
just
have warned
drives
me
her
that
nuts.
day.
Did you do that to her?
Oh, Christ.
Oh, Pierre.
Yeah.
Bad Pierre. Now I know why she's not talking to me.
Yep.
Okay. Thank you. But there's something about, you can't say it's in people's genes, because I was thinking, here's 4 kids from the same parents. 2 of us look young and 2 of us don't. What's the difference between the 2 of us? Now my younger brother, he's just 16 months younger than me, and he's an actor, and he gets roles 27, 28-year-old. He's playing 20s, and he's about to turn 50. So he's 40, he'll be 49. He's 49 now, right? He turns 50 this year. Yeah, so he's going to turn 50 this year. What is it about me and him that make us look young and the other 2 look old? We came from the same stock. So I was thinking about joy and beauty. My brother is an artist. Not only is he an actor, he is an incredible artist. He sees beauty everywhere, he can draw, he's got an ear to him that he can hear a song and go and play it on the piano or anything. He's just phenomenal. So he has beauty running through him, and he looks for joy. He really is a very sweet and tender man, very, very sweet guy. And then me, I just drink Starbucks and eat chocolate. No, I'm thinking about, I'm surrounded by love. I'm involved in love, I'm involved in the work, I'm involved in teachings and spreading the teachings, joy. I'm involved in this. This is 20-somewhat years now. I'm involved in this, and I think that keeps me lively. George didn't look old until he stopped doing the work. Once he stopped doing the work, he aged very quickly, very quickly. So I think the work keeps us alive as well. I don't know. I'm just guessing, but it's very curious in my mind. 4 kids, 2 look old and 2 don't. What's the difference between the 2 of us, or the 4 of us? So, back to the fears. The next one is criticism. Here's a big one. We fear criticism. Now, when the forces are low, when our nerves are low, we become very sensitive to criticism. If a person believes that all eyes are upon them, they feel that, when they think that all eyes are upon them, it's important to remember that people are full of envy and they choose to justify their own weakness by criticizing others. So most of the time that we are criticized, it's by envious people. If we take that on, it increases our fear. Our self-doubt kicks in, our confidence begins to lower. If we have strong nerves, we can take that criticism and use it as feedback. Oh, what can I learn about myself? How can I use this? Instead of, oh, I'm such a horrible, terrible person, what am I going to do? So criticism kicks in when I'm low, when my nerves are low, and when I feel low. I have low self-esteem, lack of confidence. All of that kicks in. When you add criticism on top of that, it makes it worse. So that's why we fear it. We don't want anyone to see the bad things in our lives. It's funny how we don't mind when people mention, I don't know, you have spinach in your teeth. We don't mind them mentioning that, but don't you dare tell me that there's something wrong with my thinking or the way I feel. We get offended. Even if I have a horrible thought, we get offended. And when we fight, not to pick on certain cultures, but I will, the KKK. Oh, I'm trying not to be judgmental. A unique culture of individuals who are put together and discover or decided that their race is better than the other races, and they try to wipe out, intimidate the other races. most of them are fearful. Most of the people are fearful. Otherwise, they wouldn't have the white sheets on their head. They would be proud to say, look who I am. So it's based on fear. It really is based on fear. I remember one time when I was growing up, somebody had said, don't hold hands with that little girl because that black is going to rub on you. I remember that, thinking, what? And I really thought that it would come off on me, but because somebody told me that. I was about 6 years old when I first had that. I didn't grow up with a lot of black people in our community, so it was different. And I didn't know the difference, and of course I'm just going to listen to what parents are telling us. Don't talk to those people. They're gonna make you be a certain way or act a certain way. So sometimes criticism is actually a left-handed compliment. If you think about it, when somebody criticizes you, it's because they're envious of what you have. So it's actually a compliment, if you can think about it that way. Most of us don't. We feel, if we choose to live by wisdom and intelligence, we don't even bother with the criticism. We just let it roll off our back. Like water on a duck, just rolls off our back. We just say thank you and move on. Number 5, the 5th fear, is loss of love. Oh, I didn't put criticism up here. The loss of love. Here, we got lots of this up here. This is a big one. So loss of love, I'm going to say missing the mark because I know Nicole. Intimacy, love, intimacy, passing away, so some emotional fears. I'm going to say emotional fears, death of a child, unknown heights, loss of a family member. I would say that would be love. Being alone is love. Not finishing life, self-dependent, abandonment is love. Lonesome is love. Disconnected is, I'm going to say love, loneliness, and no love right there. So that's almost everybody up there has love. So our fear of loss of love. When we have this fear, we feel inferior. I'm afraid I'm going to lose someone, and I need that person to feel strong. So I'm inferior. Now this love doesn't have to be a person. It can be love of an animal. That we have the same strength, we need to have that animal around, otherwise I'm gonna fall apart. I need this person. So when I have loss of love, it causes inferiority. It also causes loss of self-confidence as well. The fear that follows will lose someone very close and dear to you. So I'm afraid I'm going to lose somebody. This can only be changed when your loss of sense of inferiority and then must be met with a healthy nerve force. So you have to get over feeling inferior. Jealousy is at the peak of this fear. So those people who are jealous, it's love. You're afraid of love. So you're jealous. I'm afraid I'm going to lose so-and-so. Those of you remember the story that George used to tell? Well, I'll tell you because many of you don't remember this. George, the first time he was married twice. The first time he was married, had wife, 4 kids, divorced, and got married a second time. Second time he got married, he's going to do it all right. He's going to make sure everything's great, and he wanted to be home every day when his wife got home from work. So he'd get home at 5 o'clock, she'd show up like 2 minutes after, and they'd talk. Well, one day he comes home. Now, he was an old man, so back then there was no cell phone. So I'm just going to put that out there. Pay phones is all people had. So you literally didn't hear from people until they got to a phone or showed up. There was no internet, there was no email, there was no smartphones, there were no cell phones whatsoever. This is the old ancient age, okay? So he gets home, 5 o'clock, and his wife isn't there. And he's fine until 5 after. Then he starts panicking. Where is she? What happened? 15 after, he is about to call the police. Something happened to his wife. Oh my gosh. By 5:30, he's angry at her now because he's certain she's having an affair. By 5:45, he's ready to pack his bags and leave because he knows she doesn't love him anymore. So his mind just kept building on and on and on. And when she finally showed up about like 5:50 it was, 50 minutes, she was late 50 minutes. He actually, in 50 minutes, had her doing more stuff than she could possibly have done in 3 years. He had her do that all in 50 minutes. He was certain she was doing all of that. And when she finally showed up, it was a flat tire. I mean, somebody helped her put a new tire on, and then she got home. That was it. Back then and there, you didn't have to call AAA, come get me. It was, you had to wait for someone to come and help you. So it all came to sense. But what he discovered was something that was amazing. In his jealousy, he suffered for 50 minutes as if she were actually doing everything he thought she was. It wasn't that he was just thinking of it. He actually experienced, she's having an affair on me, and he felt that in his body. He suffered as if she actually did cheat on him. She didn't. He suffered as if she actually was leaving him, or was off gambling with all the money, or is on a shopping spree. I mean, he suffered all of this, even though it never occurred. That was all a result in his mind. So jealousy is the peak of losing love. He thought he was going to lose her, and so he went into a wild, jealous rage. He used to talk about his jealousy a lot. That was his one vice, is his jealousy. One time he got so angry with her, he kicked, in the printing company, he kicked a box. He thought it was an empty box, and it was a box full of paper. Have you ever lifted a box full of paper? I mean, it was a big box, a skid full. He broke his toe because he was so angry. So he used to talk about how jealousy had a hold of him for a while until he managed to rise above it. So when it comes to fear of the loss of love, jealousy is at its peak. It causes us to want to own people rather than just love them. You're mine. You're my wife. You're my child. My dog. I own you. That's what we say. You're mine. Instead of just simply loving them. The fear of being alone and not loved is a groundless one. It's got no validity to it. The fear of being alone and not loved has no validity to it. George says, there are many people available to love and to be loved. One of the things I talk in the classroom, sometimes I'll have people who say, oh, my children, I don't see my children anymore, the husband or the wife took them and whatnot, and my suggestion is always, well, go find another kid. There's lots of kids who want to be loved. What's stopping you? But they want that child. It's not that they don't want love, they want that one, so they want the connection. Truly, there's lots of people who want to be loved and need to be loved. They're available to us, so there's no reason for us to be alone. They're right there. We just have the attachment to a specific one. Also, there's always someone who needs you. There is always someone who needs you. You look around your life, there is always somebody who needs you. And that people that you can love. And finally, the last fear that I'm going to mention is death. And that's up there several times. Whether it's death of a child, death of myself, my own death, the unknown, I'm going to throw that as death as well. Drowning, of course, is death. Unknown, we've got there. Heights leads eventually to death. Depression was love. I'm going to say depression. But anyway, death. The fear of death always creeps when the nerves are very low as well. Many people live in the shadow of death all the time because they fear it. So they're always thinking about death. So they're in their shadow and it's always on their mind. Now, there is, as a side note, there is an ageless wisdom teachings that says you should think about death every day. But it means befriend death. Not be morbidly thinking about death, but it's to befriend death. You know, one day death is going to happen. We know it's going to happen, so befriend death. George did a beautiful thing when he died. He showed us how to die. He showed us how to die well. When he died, he had a smile on his face, a big, huge smile on his face, opened his eyes, smiled at us, and closed his eyes, and that was it. No fear whatsoever. I mean, it was one of the most beautiful things I've ever seen. First time I ever saw somebody die, grateful that it was that way, that he was smiling on that. To embrace it, because that's what he said. You have to embrace death. It's going to happen. No matter what, we cannot stop this. So you might as well make it your friend before it comes across as your enemy, and you'll be so terrified that when you get sick and you know you're dying, you're going to lose your life force, completely lose it. He couldn't wait to die. Those who fear cancer die, oftentimes I said that already. Morbid fear of death seems to take charge of the mental facilities, so much so that everything a person does is defense of this fear. If I'm so afraid of death, everything I do is going to prevent me from dying. I'm going to eat the right way so I don't die earlier. I'm going to avoid certain people because I don't want to be around gangs or something and die earlier. I'll avoid certain countries because I don't want to be blown up by a bomb because I want to live longer. So I actually start altering my life so I can live longer. All of that is in defensiveness. To accept death is a necessity and pass it out of your mind because you know it's going to happen. Torcum even suggests, here's something about fear too. So I gave you the 6 fears. We have fear of poverty, ill health, old age, criticism, loss of love, and death. One thing that I know about fear, it's contagious. When you're around a fearful person and you have low energy, what happens to you? You become fearful. Have you ever been in a movie theater where there's a horrible movie on? A horror movie, that's what they call horror movies. When there's a horror movie on, how does the audience react? You're all screaming together, right? You're all screaming and the fear increases. Sometimes that's the benefit of the industry is you get enough people to be fearful, it makes the movie even worse. When they made Jaws, this is actually a shock. Most people don't know this. Jaws was supposed to be a comedy. It was. It was really supposed to be a comedy. I still don't see the comedy in it, but that's because I grew up on Long Island where there were sharks. So I've seen sharks in the water. I don't want to. That's not very funny. But Jaws was originally supposed to be a comedy, and then eventually, when they saw that the people were fearful of it, they flipped it and started advertising it as a thriller, which made more sense and it made profits. It was one of the highest-grossing movies until Star Wars came along. But anyway, so fear increases not only within myself, but if I'm in the vicinity of people who are fearful, it affects me. Now here's what Torkham says, and this one, when I read this today, it really blew my mind. Torkham suggests fear itself can be transmitted from person to person. Kissing, handshakes, even intercourse. It's possible even to be contaminated by fear when living in a house where the former occupants were full of fear. The emanation of fear sticks to the walls and to the objects in the surroundings. I thought that was incredible. If I move into a house where somebody was fearful, I will feel that fear. So then naturally my mind drifted over to the other side of the world, where there's bombings and shellings and people are not sleeping at night because you don't know if you're going to wake up in the morning. So how much fear is created in that part of the world right now? And how many people are experiencing fear and they're not even in a fearful situation? Maybe they're 100 miles away. Well, look at it. I'm talking to you about bombing today, and I'm on the other side of the world. So we can actually transfer all the way across the world. We can feel the fear. The fear so much that Olympians are deciding whether or not to actually compete because of fear. So it can be transmitted. It's amazing to me. I think isn't Russia where they had the bombing of the Olympics Russia's where they had the kidnaps of the Olympics back in the, there was Moscow. It was Moscow, where they had Olympians that were kidnapped in the 70s, I think it was. A bunch of Olympians were kidnapped. So I thought about that too. That it's interesting that we're actually going to go back to Moscow again. I'm really not a big sports fan. It's just been on the news lately, so I've been reading it. But anyway, as I said, Torkham says that fear can be transmitted even by shaking hands with somebody. Think about how many people you shake hands with. If those people are fearful, where's the germ? Do we have the germ thing for fear? Maybe you do for germs, but is there one for fear? So, back to Torkham, he says, fear is separative. This, I think, is very strange, too. People are afraid. They either stay alone or they fear with a group of members who have the same fear. So I'll either be by myself or I'll find people who fear the same way that I fear. So I feel at home with people who are fearful. He says that fear affects the nerve centers and blocks their activity. In a moment of fear, one may become impotent, another may be not able to speak, another may go blind, and still another may become paralyzed. So just because it's fear doesn't mean it affects us all the same way. It depends upon our nerves, or the strength of our nerves, or the weakness of our nerves. That's how fear affects us. So I've laid out the 6 basic fears, and I've mentioned several times the weak nerves. Like I said, next time we're going to discuss how you can start strengthening your nerves. Just like you work out to strengthen the muscles in your body, there are things that you can do to strengthen your nerves. We're going to talk about that next time. But I don't want to leave you in a depleted state, so I will give you this. I mentioned it already, and I'll say it again. One way to begin to release the grip that fear has on you is to love. One of my quotes, I gave the facilitators a task a couple of years ago. We had to come up with an original quote. So I came up with an original quote. I had to remind myself what it was. My quote is, "It's my dream that one day our love for one another will surpass our fear of one another." Because we cannot love and experience fear. They cannot coexist. You either love or you fear. So one way for you to start combating fear is to start loving. And even if you just don't start loving, start spreading joy. Start looking for beauty. Those are attributes of love. So that's one thing that you can start doing right now, is to begin to switch from fear to love. Because remember, they cannot coexist. You either are fearful or you have love. You cannot have both. So when you're in the fearful moments, or if you start finding that you're feeling fear, switch it to love. Think of joy, think of beauty. Find a way to be joyful, to express beauty. An action, any action is all it will take to shift your mind. Because really, what we're talking about is controlling our thinking. Fear is derived from our thinking, and if we want to change it, it's got to start here. Has to, in our minds. Doesn't matter what we do here, it's got to be here. So if my thinking is fearful, and I want to change it, I could plant a garden, which is physical, but every time I see it, it reminds me of beauty. If I've got flowers, it will remind me of joy and beauty. So that's a good reminder, but I have to think that process. How many times have you walked past a garden and not even noticed it? That's because you're wrapped up in fear. You missed the beauty that's right there. Or you're so preoccupied with what's going on, you're missing beauty. So I'm going to give you a task. For the next 2 weeks, before you get here, how many times do you recognize beauty? And how many times do you discover that you're coming out of fear? That you feel tense? That you're feeling tight or stressed, anxious? How many times do you experience that? Now I know from experience, when we give assignments, most people forget after 20 minutes of leaving here. So you might want to write it down on your little handout that you're going to take. I didn't put it on there as a suggestion. I just thought about it right now. But I'm curious to see how many of you actually pay attention for the next 2 weeks about fear and love, the two options. And as I said, next time we come back, I'm going to talk to you about the ways that we can increase our strength, our nervous strength, and some of the other ways that we can combat fear. So thank you all for coming out tonight. I appreciate it. Thank you guys for coming back.